I cared for my father-in-law for 10 years. After his funeral, I came home to find my wife, her brother, and a lawyer waiting. The will gave him the house, and me $5,000 to leave in 48 hours. I walked out silently. 3 days later, I opened the envelope he'd given me. That's when everything changed. The February rain soaked through my coat as I unlocked the door to Frank's house. My house, I'd always thought, though I'd never said it out loud. My hands were still shaking from lowering him into the ground 90 minutes ago. The cemetery groundskeeper had been closing the gates when I left. 10 years I'd cared for Frank Chen. 10 years of 3 a.m. medication alarms, of washing him when he couldn't wash himself, of holding his papery hand through chemo treatments that left him retching for days. I stepped inside expecting silence, maybe a casserole from a neighbor, the hollow echo of grief. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Sarah sat in Frank's leather recliner, the chair she'd never touched in 10 years of visiting, maybe 8 times total. Her brother Derek sprawled on the sectional sofa I'd bought after Frank's stroke, the one with extra cushioning so he wouldn't get pressure sores. A man in a charcoal suit stood by the bay window, briefcase in hand, watching me with the dead eyes of someone who delivered bad news for a living. "Marcus," Sarah said. She didn't stand, didn't offer condolences. Her black dress looked expensive, new. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. That tone, I'd heard it before, when she'd explained why she couldn't visit during Frank's pneumonia, when Derek had called to say he was swamped at work. The weekend, Frank fell and fractured his hip. Derek held up a manila folder, like evidence in a trial. "Found Dad's will in his nightstand, right there in the drawer." I couldn't breathe. Frank and I had talked about his will 100 times during those long nights when the morphine wasn't enough and the pain kept him awake, when Sarah stopped visiting, when Derek stopped calling except to ask if his father was still holding on. "The house goes to me," Derek announced, his voice flat, matter of fact, plus his savings account, $483,000. The room tilted. I gripped the doorframe. "And me?" My voice came out hoarse. "What about—" Sarah's eyes were ice. $5,000 for your service. 10 years. 3-hour alarm cycles to reposition him so he wouldn't develop bed sores that could kill him. Pureeing his food when he couldn't swallow. Managing 17 different medications with interactions I'd had to memorize. Driving him to every oncology appointment, every physical therapy session, every specialist consultation while they were too busy with work, with life, with anything that mattered more than their dying father. "That's not possible," I said. My chest felt crushed. "Frank told me, he promised. Dad was on morphine at the end." Sarah cut me off. Her voice had the practiced smoothness of someone who'd rehearsed this conversation. "He wasn't thinking clearly. You know how confused he got. He was perfectly clear. He knew exactly what he wanted, he told me." Derek slapped the folder against his palm. The sound cracked like a gunshot. "It's right here in black and white, Marcus. Legal, notarized, dated 4 months ago. 4 months ago, Frank had been lucid, sharp. We'd watched Jeopardy together, and he'd gotten every answer in Final Jeopardy correct before the contestants did. We'd talked about maybe taking a trip to the coast when he was stronger, even though we both knew he'd never be stronger." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Torres, I'm Brian Patterson with Patterson & Associates. Per the primary beneficiary's instructions, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises." 48 hours? I looked at Sarah, really looked at her, searching for some trace of the woman who'd thanked me tearfully 7 years ago, when I'd stayed up 72 hours straight with Frank during a sepsis scare. "Are you serious right now? This is what my father wanted," she said. Each word was carved from stone. "I'm simply honoring his wishes. Your father, you didn't visit him for 6 months before he died. Neither of you. Where were you when he was crying at 3 a.m. because the pain was so bad he begged me to just let him go? Where were you when he had accidents and I had to—" My voice broke. I wouldn't cry in front of them. "Where the hell were you?" "Enough!" Derek stood, his face flushed. 6'2" of indignant rage in a $1,000 suit. "You were paid to take care of him. You did your job. Now it's time to move on. 48 hours, Marcus. Pack your shit and get out of our house." Our house. I stood very slowly. My legs felt weak, hollowed out, but I locked my knees. I'd learned how to stand while exhausted. Years of caring for Frank had taught me that. I wouldn't let them see me fall. "Understood," I said. The silence confused them. I saw it in Sarah's narrowed eyes, Derek's furrowed brow. They'd expected begging, tears, maybe anger, a scene they could use later to justify themselves. He was so unreasonable, so entitled. I turned and walked upstairs to the bedroom that had been mine for a decade. The bedroom where I'd slept with my door cracked open so I could hear Frank if he called out in the night. I packed methodically, mechanically, scrubs I hadn't worn since I'd quit my job at Valley Medical to care for Frank full-time. The Rolex watch Frank had given me for my 30th birthday, his father's watch, he'd said, and now mine. The photo albums Sarah had marked for donation with sticky notes that said garbage in her sharp handwriting. And from the bottom drawer of my dresser, beneath winter socks I'd never worn, I pulled out the envelope. Frank had pressed it into my palm 3 days before he died. His eyes had been sharp that day, cutting through the morphine fog like headlights through rain. "Marcus," he'd rasp, his voice wet and thin. "My children, they're not good people. I know that now. I didn't want to know, but I do. Don't say that. Don't defend them." His grip on my wrist had tightened with surprising strength. "You've always defended everyone, even people who don't deserve it. It's time someone protected you." He'd pulled the envelope from under his pillow, where he'd apparently hidden it like contraband. "Don't open this until I'm gone. Promise me, Marcus. Promise me you won't open it until after. I promise." "Good." He'd smiled then, really smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. "You're the son I should have had. Remember that." Now I packed the envelope at the very bottom of my suitcase, under everything else, and walked down the stairs without looking back at the only home I'd known for 10 years. Sarah and Derek were in the kitchen, already dividing up furniture with colored stickers. The lawyer was gone. They didn't look up as I passed. I left my key on the hall table and walked out into the rain. I spent 2 days in the Riverside Motel on Route 9, a place that smelled like industrial bleach and cigarette smoke seeping through walls. The clerk had looked at me with pity when I'd paid cash for a week in advance. Sarah had transferred the $5,000 to my account. I'd checked obsessively, unable to believe it was real. That was it. My worth to the Chen family. 10 years of my life valued at $500 per year. On the morning of the 3rd day, staring at water stains on the ceiling and listening to the couple next door fight about money, I opened the envelope. Inside, one brass key with a number engraved on it, 402, and a note in Frank's shaky handwriting, the letters wobbling like his hands had trembled as he wrote, "Marcus, I know my children. I've known for years what they are. The real will is in safety deposit box 402 at First National Bank. There's a video too. Call Bernard Winters at 555-0147. He has everything you need. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. You deserve so much better than what they'll try to do to you. You deserve better than what I'm asking you to do now. But I know you'll do what's right. You always have. All my love, Frank." My hands shook as I grabbed my coat. Bernard Winters was 73 years old, wearing a 3-piece navy suit with a gold pocket watch chain, sitting behind a desk made of dark wood that looked older than I was. His office overlooked downtown from the 14th floor. Real law degree from Yale on the wall, photos of grandchildren, a distinguished service award from the State Bar Association. "Marcus Torres," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes kind behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Frank said you'd come, though he hoped to God you wouldn't have to. You knew Frank? 47 years. We went to college together. I was his best man, godfather to Sarah." His expression darkened. "I've watched those kids grow into strangers. Frank asked me to help him 6 months ago. Said he needed to protect someone who'd protected him. We took his private car to First National Bank." Bernard nodded to the bank manager. They were clearly acquainted, and we were led to the vault. The safety deposit box was slim, metal, cold to the touch. Inside, documents, a flash drive, and a letter addressed to Sarah and Derek Chen. Bernard put on reading glasses and began sorting papers. Frank's official will was executed on September 14th of last year, 8 months ago, witnessed by myself and Susan Chen, his sister, notarized by Elizabeth Moore, a licensed notary public with the state, filed with the county clerk's office. Ironclad. He began reading aloud. His voice was steady, professional, but I saw his jaw tighten. "I, Francis James Chen, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. I revoke all previous wills and codicils." My heart hammered. "To my son Derek Chen and my daughter Sarah Chen, I leave $25,000 each to be paid from my estate within 90 days of my death. $25,000. Not the house, not the savings. The remainder of my estate, including my home at 847 Maple Drive, my savings and investment accounts, and all personal property therein, I leave entirely to Marcus David Torres, who has been my sole caregiver, companion, and true family for the past 10 years. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. Bernard continued. "However, this bequest to my children is conditional. If either Sarah Chen or Derek Chen contests this will in any way, or if either of them presents false documentation regarding my estate or my wishes, they shall forfeit their entire inheritance and receive nothing. This is a no-contest clause, and it is absolute and final." "But they showed me—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "A forgery," Bernard said quietly. He pulled out another document, this one marked with evidence tags. Frank suspected they might try something like this. He had me draft a dummy will 6 months ago, something they could find and use. He left it in obvious places, waited to see what they'd do. That's entrapment. No, Bernard's smile was sharp. That's chess. Frank was always always 3 moves ahead. The will they showed you? I've had it examined by a forensic document specialist. Lisa Chen, 22 years with the State Police Crime Lab. She confirmed it's a forgery. The signature's traced, not genuine. The notary stamp is fake. The witness signatures don't match any registered witnesses in the system. He pulled out more papers, which means, Marcus, that when they filed this document with probate court, they committed multiple felonies: forgery, attempted theft by deception, fraud, potentially perjury when they swear to the court that it's legitimate. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Frank knew. He knew they'd do this. He knew his children. Bernard's voice softened. He just wished he'd been wrong. He loaded the flash drive into his laptop. There's one more thing. The video filled the screen. Frank sat in his recliner, the good days, maybe 4 months before he died, when he could still sit up without help. He wore the cardigan I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, soft gray wool. His face was thin, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "I am Francis James Chen," he said. His voice was strong, clear, nothing like the whisper I'd heard at the end. "Today is September 14th, 2024. I am 78 years old. I am of sound mind. I am not under duress. I am not medicated beyond my normal pain management. And I am making this video of my own free will to accompany my last will and testament." He leaned forward. "My son Derek Chen and my daughter Sarah Chen have not been present in my life for years. They visit on Christmas and Thanksgiving, if I'm lucky. They stay for an hour. They bring store-bought pie and empty conversation. They made it abundantly clear that my care, my illness, and my needs were burdens they did not want to carry." My throat tightened painfully. Marcus Torres quit his job to care for me. He has bathed me when I couldn't stand. He has fed me when I couldn't swallow. He has held my hand through treatments that made me wish I was dead. He has preserved my dignity when I had none left. Marcus has been my family. Marcus has been my son. And Marcus deserves everything I have to give because he earned it 1,000 times over. Frank's eyes bored into the camera, into me. If my children challenge this will, if they try to take from Marcus what he earned through a decade of sacrifice, they will receive nothing. That is my final word. That is my choice. And I make it with a clear mind and a full heart. Marcus, his voice cracked. "Thank you for giving me 10 good years when I didn't think I had one. I love you, son." The video ended. I sat in Bernard's office and cried for the first time since the funeral. Bernard handed me a box of tissues and didn't say a word. "They'll file the forged will with probate court next week," Bernard said after I'd composed myself. We were back in his office. He'd ordered sandwiches that I couldn't taste. "I've already notified the district attorney's office. Detective Rachel Morrison is assigned to the case. She'll want to meet with you." "What happens then?" "They'll arrest them, likely both of them for conspiracy, given that they're acting together. The lawyer, Patterson, he'll claim he didn't know, and he probably didn't. He's just a hired gun who didn't do due diligence." "What about the house?" "It's yours. Always was. The probate court will confirm Frank's legitimate will. This is open and shut, Marcus. They forged a legal document, presented it as genuine, and attempted to defraud you of nearly $500,000. The only question is whether they'll take a plea deal or go to trial." Detective Rachel Morrison was 41, 17 years on the force, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. We met at Bernard's office 3 days after I'd watched Frank's video. "Mr. Torres," she said, spreading files across the conference table, "I've reviewed the evidence. This is one of the clearest cases of estate fraud I've seen in my career. Usually these things are messy. Disputed signatures, questions about mental capacity. This is gift-wrapped." She showed me documents. "The forensic document examiner's report confirms the will they showed you is fraudulent. The signature doesn't match any exemplars from Mr. Chen's known signatures. The paper stock is wrong. It's laser printer paper from this year, not security paper from a law office. The notary stamp is fake. The witness named in the document, Linda Martinez, died 3 years ago. They used a dead woman as a witness." "Jesus, they're sloppy," Morrison said, "which tells me this was desperate. Have they contacted you since you left the house?" "No. Sarah transferred the $5,000. That's it." "Good. Here's what's going to happen. They have an appointment at probate court tomorrow at 10 a.m. to file the will. I'll have officers there waiting. They'll be arrested on site. We'll execute a search warrant on the house for any additional documents or evidence. You'll need to testify to what happened, what they showed you, what they said, how they presented the document." "I'll testify," Morrison nodded. "The DA will probably offer a plea. Estate fraud carries 5 to 10 years. Add in conspiracy, and we're looking at serious time. But they're both first-time offenders from good families. They'll deal. What about the house? You'll get it back. The court will void their eviction notice. You can move back in whenever you want." I stood across the street from my house, Frank's house, the house that was always supposed to be mine, at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The February rain had finally stopped. The sun was out, weak and cold. 2 police cruisers pulled up at 9:52 a.m. I watched them knock on the door. car. Watched Sarah answer, still in her expensive black dress, confusion crossing her face. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw the moment her confusion turned to panic. They brought Derek out first, hands cuffed behind his back. He was screaming something, his face red, spittle flying. The neighbors were coming out onto their porches. Mrs. Henderson from next door had her phone out recording. Sarah came next, silent, her face a mask of rage. She saw me across the street. Our eyes met. I didn't look away. The patrol car doors closed. The vehicles pulled away. My phone rang. Bernard. They tried to file it, he said. The forged will. Detectives were waiting in the clerk's office. They've both been charged with forgery, attempted theft, and conspiracy. The DA added perjury because Sarah signed an affidavit swearing the will was genuine. What happens now? Now? You go home, Marcus. The probate court will have Frank's real will confirmed within the week. The house is yours. The money is yours. Everything Frank wanted you to have. I pulled into the driveway. My driveway. The key still worked. They hadn't changed the locks yet. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Frank's recliner in its place. The photos on the mantel. The medication chart I'd made still stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. I sat in Frank's chair and finally let myself grieve. 3 weeks later, Bernard called with an update. They took a deal, he said. Sarah pleaded guilty to forgery and fraud. 3 years, eligible for parole in 18 months. Derek pleaded to the same. 2 years, parole in 12. That's it? First-time offenders. Good lawyers. They'll serve time in minimum security. It's not nothing, Marcus. It wasn't enough. But then again, what would have been? The house is officially yours as of today, Bernard continued. Deeds been transferred. Frank's accounts have been released from probate. $483,000 is now in your name. Plus the life insurance policy you didn't know about, another $200,000. Frank wanted you taken care of. $683,000. 10 years of care had bought me a fortune I'd never wanted. What I'd wanted was more time with Frank. I'm still in the house. It's mine now. Legally, officially, irrevocably mine. I've changed some things. Painted the bedroom. Replaced the hospital bed with a regular one. Put Frank's ashes on the mantel next to the photo of us at the beach. One of the good days before the cancer came back. Mrs. Henderson brings me casseroles sometimes. Says Frank would be proud of me. Says he talked about me all the time. Told everyone who'd listen that I was the best thing that ever happened to him. Sarah and Derek are in prison. I don't think about them much. Sometimes I wonder if they understood what they were doing. If they saw the trap Frank had set. If they knew that he'd predicted every move they'd make. Frank had known his children. He'd known exactly what they'd do. He'd known they'd come the day of his funeral. That they'd ambush me. That they'd bring their forged will and their lawyer and their cruelty. And he'd made sure that when they fell, I'd still be standing. I visit his grave every Sunday. Bring flowers. Tell him about my week. Tell him he was right about everything. About them. About what they'd do. About how I'd need protection. Tell him that he was the father I'd never had. And that I miss him every single day. And sometimes, when the grief gets too heavy, I imagine I can hear him laughing. That sharp, knowing laugh he had when he'd won at chess. When he'd been 3 moves ahead all along. The house is mine. The money is mine. The justice is mine. But what I'd trade it all for is one more day with Frank. One more night of holding his hand through the pain. One more conversation where he looked at me and called me son. They thought they could take from me what I'd earned. Frank made sure they lost everything they'd never deserved. And I'm still standing.